All right, so let's go on with our special right triangles. So the first type we're going to talk about is isosceles right triangles. Now, what makes something isosceles? What does it mean to be isosceles? Two sides are the same. That's what isosceles means. So in this picture here, we see the two equal sides, which are the two legs. So when it's an isosceles right triangle, the right means you have the right angle, but it basically means your legs are congruent. Okay, so that's another thing that you need to know. If it's an isosceles right triangle, the legs are congruent. Now, isosceles doesn't only mean that the two sides are equal, but it also means that two angles are equal. So we call those two equal angles the base angles. So you would have congruent base angles here and here because the other angle is 90. Now, in a triangle, all the angles add up to be 180 altogether. So our two base angles separately would add up to be 90, and if they're equal, we could split 90 in half and we get 45. We're so close. So our base angles here are both 45 degrees. So this example here is an isosceles right triangle. Now, there are two ways to solve this. The first way is using Pythagorean theorem, which we have done before, but let's set that up and do it. And then I'll show you the shortcut. So x squared plus x squared equals 8 squared. A squared plus b squared equals c squared, right? Now what's x squared plus x squared? What's 8 squared? And then we would divide by 2, so x squared equals, and then we would need to square root, and we can't square root that number, so we have to make a factor tree. Now, if you're really tired of making factor tree, the shortcut will allow you to not make it. So what multiplies to be 32? 8 and 4. What multiplies to be 8? And what multiplies to be 4? It's a lot of 2's. If you look at it, there are 5 2's there once you complete your full factor tree. So remember, we're circling pairs. And we have 2 times 2, which is 4. So this becomes 4 square root of 2. I did that backwards. I'm writing on a picture, so it doesn't like me. Let's see, how do I make a 2? It helps when you do sound effects, right? I just realized that I did that. Okay, so our answer here would be 4 square root of 2, and that's if we wanted to use Pythagorean theorem. But there's a shortcut that helps us out with the triangles. And so the shortcut is if you take any leg and multiply it by the square root of 2, you get your hypotenuse. So leg times the square root of 2 gets that hypotenuse. You could use sine, cosine, and tangent. That is true. However, if you use, in Math 3, we're going to talk about reference angles and specific angles, and it makes it a nice, pretty whole number. But remember, most of sine, cosine, and tangent gives it to us at decimals, right? Well, this we want exact answers with. There are certain things we want exact answers. And so if we use sine, cosine, tangent to find x, it would give us a bunch of decimals, and we'd have to figure out what that decimal would be. So on these, we're going to be specific. So on your test that you have, I will specify these need to have specific answers, exact answers, and these you can round to 2 decimal places. So anything where you can round to 2 decimal places is sine, cosine, tangent. Anything else is going to be using Pythagorean theorem. Okay, so this is our shortcut that we're going to use with this triangle. Now, with this one, it might seem a little bit longer because in this picture, we know the hypotenuse. The leg is actually x. So it's x times the square root of 2 equals 8. And what we want to do is we want to solve for x. So what would we do to get x by itself? Well, we'd have to get rid of that square root of 2, right? So we're going to divide it. You're right. We're going to divide by the square root of 2. But remember what we talked about in our radicals unit. Can we leave a square root in our denominator? No, we cannot. So we have to times the top and the bottom by the square root of 2. Now, once you do that, remember you go straight across the top, straight across the bottom. So it's 8 square root of 2 over 2. And that can now reduce to 4 square root of 2. So you end up getting the same answer. So there is a little extra steps if you have the hypotenuse and not the leg. But you could still do Pythagorean theorem if you want. But there are some shortcuts here. If we're dividing by the square root of 2, what is 8 divided by 2? 4. And then we tack on square root of 2. So that's a little shortcut there. You could divide those two numbers, 8 and 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. And then tack on that square root of 2 to the problem. So extra little shortcut. All right, let's do some other problems where I give you the leg and maybe you want to find the hypotenuse. If my board decides to change. It will in a minute. So if you see an isosceles right triangle, you get to choose which way that you want to do it. Tonight when you do the homework, though, try the shortcut and see if you can do it with a shortcut. When it comes time for the test that you have coming up on Monday, you can decide if you want shortcut or Pythagorean theorem. But for the homework, try the shortcut. You just leave it as a fraction. Yeah. All right, copy down the first picture there. Now, just one picture at a time. Let's start with the first one. Now, is this an isosceles right triangle? Yes, how do you know? Two sides are equal. I have this marked and this marked, so this other side must be 9. Now, instead of setting up Pythagorean theorem, let's use our shortcut. It's leg times the square root of 2 is the hypotenuse. Okay, so what is my leg? 9. So 9 times the square root of 2 is the hypotenuse, which is x. Boom, I've solved for x. That's it. So it's really nice when it gives you the leg, right? All you do is tack on a square root of 2 beside of it. Leg times square root of 2, hypotenuse. All right, copy down example 2. Most of the homework that you have tonight, most of it I showed very little or no work for. So those of you who like showing no work, this is your day. Because you can get through all the problems without work. Now, problem 2. Is it an isosceles right triangle? Yes. I have the two sides are equal, so this one also must be 2 square root of 2. And then I use my shortcut. Leg times the square root of 2 equals the hypotenuse. Remember, the more times you write it, the more often you are to remember it. So what is my leg? Okay, so we have 2 square root of 2, which is a leg, and then we times that by the square root of 2. Now remember how we multiply radicals. Numbers outside multiply together, numbers inside multiply together. So outside we have 2, inside we have 2 times 2, which makes 4. What is the square root of 4? 2. So this is really 2 times 2, which is 4. I'm just showing all of my work here, but you guys already did the same square roots times the same square roots. So right up here, you could say, well, it's 2 times 2, because the square root of 2 times the square root of 2, and then you could get to that 4 a little faster. So if you know those things, do them, okay? But just a reminder, numbers outside multiply together, numbers inside multiply together. All right, then write down problem number 3. Is this an isosceles right triangle? Yes, it is. How do we know? We got the angles marked. So if the angles are marked congruent, then you can mark the legs congruent, and you can throw in an X right there at the bottom of that triangle. So equal angles means equal sides. Now let's use our shortcut. Leg times the square root of 2 is the hypotenuse. And then plug in what you know. X times the square root of 2 equals 6. Now, when we have the hypotenuse, we need to solve for x, the leg. How are we going to do that? Divide by the square root of 2. Yep, so x equals 6 over the square root of 2. Now, if we're following our steps that we did from the radicals unit without going further shortcuts, but we can talk about those in a minute, we're going to times the top and bottom by square root of 2. So on the top, we end up with 6 square root of 2 over just 2, because the same square roots cancel each other out. And then if we want to simplify that, we get 3 square root of 2. So remember the shortcut. What's 6 divided by 2? 3. And then I just tack on a square root of 2. So when you are doing your homework, do you put your notes away in your binder and not look at them? You leave them out on your desk, because you're going to see some problems like this where you have the leg. So if I give you the leg, times by the square root of 2. If I give you the hypotenuse, we divide by the square root of 2. Or you can just divide the hypotenuse by 2 and tack on a square root of 2 with it. Voila! It's magic. All right, let's talk about our next kind of special right triangles, and that is the 30, 60, 90. So write that down, draw that picture. You don't have to draw that picture quite as big as I've drawn it, but there you go. So our last new thing for this unit are these triangles that are 30, 60, 90. The 30, 60, 90 represents the angle measurements. So in this picture, I see the 90 degree, I see my 30 degree, and we said the angles all have to add up to be 180 in a triangle, so our missing angle must be 60. And down here it tells you our different legs that we have, because if they have different angle measurements, they're not going to be the same width for those legs like the last problems that we did. So the short leg is always across from the 30 degree angle, the long leg is always across from the 60, and the hypotenuse is always across from the right angle. So we have some formulas to memorize and know with this. So if we take our short leg and times it by the square root of 3, we get our long leg. Also, if we take our short leg and multiply it by 2, we get our hypotenuse. Now, I know these may seem like strange equations, but a lot of really smart people have done a lot of math to know that these equations work every time. And because we are a new generation, we don't have to go through and do all that math to prove it. Instead, we're going to sing a song about it. Okay, y'all, stand on up because there's hand motions that go with the song. So I want you guys to know them. Okay, so the formulas, let me see if I can, well, you got them written down on paper. But the formulas are short legs. So everybody go like this for the short leg. Make like a little hamburger, short leg. And then it's times the square root of 3. So you draw a square root in the air and hold up the number 3. Equals the long leg. So we go like wide for the long leg. All right. And then we're going to eventually talk about the short leg again. And we're going to multiply that by 2. We're going to go like this because that equals our hypotenuse. See how that works? Okay. And those of you who don't see this visually or just watching the video, I'm sorry, but it's really entertaining. Come by and see me and I'll show you the hand motions. That's all you really need. The rest of it, you can make up your own hand motions. So let's do our fun song. It is also to the YMCA, y'all. Y'all ready? Feel free. Here we go. Short leg times the square root of 3 is your long leg. That's the way it must be, because the short leg is the one that you need in a third. Just draw a triangle. Short leg. Multiply it by 2 is your hypotenuse. See, it's kind of fun. It's like you're dabbing. Remember the old dab? Oh, short leg. Is the one that you use in a 30, 60, 90. Here it comes. Geometry. And if you study, you'll at least get a C. See the C? You can draw some cool shapes. You can practice and drill. It's amazing how brilliant you feel. Okay, here it goes again. Ready? Short leg times the square root of 3 is your long leg. That's the way it must be, because the short leg is the one that you need in a 30, 60, 90. Short leg. Multiply it by 2 is your hypotenuse. That is what you must do, because the short leg is the one that you use in a 30, 60, 90. Again, geometry. And if you study, you'll at least get a C. You can draw some cool shapes. You can practice and drill. It's amazing how brilliant you'll feel. Oh, see, wasn't that just the funnest thing ever? You guys can sit down. But I will tell you that this little song right here, it's gonna pop back up in Math 3 when we talk about some trig things. It's gonna pop back up in Pre-Calc in Math 4. You're gonna see these 30, 60, 90. So knowing some hand motions can really help you remember, but also singing the song. So y'all can try it again from your seat. So it was short leg times the square root of 3 is the long leg. Okay, then we have short leg. Multiply it by 2 is your hypotenuse. See? So if you remember the hand motions, it does help remember the song. So let's do some example problems with these. Everybody copy down number 1. Now, somebody did ask me before, could you use Pythagorean theorem on these problems? Well, how many parts do you need to do Pythagorean theorem? You need 2 legs to solve for the third, right? In these examples, are you given 2? No, you're given 1 and you want to solve for 2. So you have to know what kind of triangle you have. So remember, this only works in 30, 60, 90. In this example, I see my 30, I see my 90, so the other one must be 60. Now, the other thing you want to do before you get started, I feel like we've done this a lot in all of our problems, is we want to label all of our sides. So let's start with a short leg. The short leg is across from the 30, so my short leg is X. My long leg is Y, because it's across from the 60, and my hypotenuse is because it's across from the 90. So across from the shortest angle is the shortest side, and our hypotenuse is the longest side of the whole triangle. All right, let's write down those formulas. Short leg times the square root of 3 is the long leg, and short leg multiply it by 2 is your hypotenuse. Don't worry, I will sing them with every problem. All right, now what do we know? We know the hypotenuse, so we're going to use this formula over here. The short leg is X, so X times 2 equals 8. So X must equal 4. Ta-da! How simple was that, right? That's all you got to do. Now we know the short leg. So now we're going to take the short leg and we're going to put it in this formula here. So short leg times the square root of 3 is the long leg. So 4 times the square root of 3 is Y. Done. That's solved, right? We don't have anything to do. Now, the easiest thing to have is either if I give you the short leg or I give you the hypotenuse. Because if I give you the hypotenuse, you just divide it by 2 and then you times it by the square root of 3. You got your answer. So giving the hypotenuse is pretty short. All right, let's do problem number 2. See, I told you guys today, if y'all are the non-work showing folks, it's pretty simple. Now, before you get started, finish labeling your angles and your sides. I have the 60 and 90, so my missing angle must be 30. What is my short leg? Square root of 6. What's my long leg? And what's my hypotenuse? Okay, then we write down our formulas. Short leg times the square root of 3 is the long leg. And short leg, multiply it by 2 is your hypotenuse. That is what you must do, because the short leg. Nope, okay, I'm sorry. Yes. Yep, because to make that angle, like to open that angle up, it's only going to open up so far, so that's just going to open up to make that shorter leg. 60 degrees is a bit bigger, so if we go out from it, it's going to make that side longest. All right, now we know our short leg, so we're just going to plug it in for each part. So it's square root of 6 times the square root of 3 equals Y, because Y was the long leg. What is square root of 6 times square root of 3? Square root of 18. Do I stop here? That's right. Remember, any number that's under a square root, we need to simplify it as much as possible. And 18, we can make a factor tree with it. What multiplies to be 18? Either way, it'll work out the same. What multiplies to be 9? So So we have, that is correct. I know we thought we were going to get away from factor trees, but we never do. All right, now we have short leg. Multiply it by 2 is your hypotenuse. Now, we're multiplying square root of 6 times 2. Can I multiply the 2 and the 6? That don't work. So how do I write this answer to make it look better? That's it. Put that 2 in the front, and there you have that answer. So remember, our whole numbers are going to multiply together and stay in the front. What's under the root will multiply together and stay under the root. Any questions on these two? Okay, we got a few more examples to get through. There's number 3. Write that one down. Don't look at that one yet. Okay, y'all settle down. We only got 2 more problems. Shh. 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 Hush, little babies. Now, when you see these for homework, they are in the textbook, online textbook. So you might want to draw the pictures, or if you don't want to draw the pictures, just write down what each of them are. Short leg equals whatever, L equals whatever, and so forth and so on. So here we have our 30 and our 90, so our missing angle here must be 60. All right, let's label our sides. What's my short leg? X. What's my long leg? 5. And what's my hypotenuse? Yes, it is kind of flipped around, okay? So just remember, across from the 60 is the long leg. So short leg times the square root of 3 is the long leg. And short leg, multiply it by 2 is your hypotenuse. So remember, because you can think about it using the hand motions. Multiply it by 2 is your hypotenuse. Fun times. All right, short leg is X times the square root of 3 is the long leg, which is 5. This one's going to be a little bit more challenging there with that root in there. What am I going to have to do to get X alone? And this was our second or third math commandment. I get them confused, but thou shalt not leave a square root in thy denominator. That is correct. Good job. Thanks, y'all, for saving me on that one. So how do I get rid of it? Got to multiply by. There you go. Now this is one where 5 and 3 cannot be divided, so we just have to leave them together. So it's 5 square root of 3 over 3. So whatever is in that square root, if you can divide them, go ahead and divide them. So this is our short leg. This is our X. So I'm going to have to plug that in here and multiply all of that by 2. To get my hypotenuse, which is y. Now, when you multiply a fraction by 2, what are you actually multiplying by 2? It's 2 over 1. You're exactly right. So the only thing that we're actually multiplying is the numerator, the top. So what's 5 square root 3 times 2? Good. So all the problems that you do tonight should have those exact answers. But if you struggle with the square roots on what to do, just raise your hand and I will come over and I will help you with that. Our last problem we have here is kind of a combination. So draw that fun picture. Did anybody have any questions so far, by the way? That's y'all okay? Okay. If y'all have any questions, of course, raise your hand. Quietly in your seat. Sure, that's fine. And if you go sing it to, Cash or some other 10th graders or 11th graders who had this class recently, be like, hey, we sung the song about 30, 60, 90. They were all go, oh, God. But then when you start singing it, they were like, short leg times the square root of 3 is the long leg. Like, they will know it. So. Now, in this particular picture, we have one big triangle, but remember, our whole unit is on right triangles. So, we actually have two right triangles. We have one on the left and one on the right. Notice the one on the right, we have just A, C, and D as our side links, so that's not going to help us. We're going to have to use this one over here on the left. And what kind of triangle is this one? It's isosceles. If this is 45, then this has to be 45. Some people call it a 45, 45, 90. I asked my class one time to make up a song that went with this, and this one kid goes, 45, 45, 90, let's order to his hypotenuse. And I was like, oh, that was scary. Okay. And then the whole class started doing it. So every time I say 45, 45, 90, I think about that kid going, 45, 45, 90, let's order to hypotenuse. And I was like, okay. Might have been a little afraid for my life on that one. But anyway, if it is a 45, 45, 90, look back at your beginning notes. What's the shortcut for 45, 45, 90? Or isosceles right? Leg times the square root of 2 equals the hypotenuse. What do we know in that picture there? We know 5 square root of 2 is the hypotenuse. And you could use either one of those legs because those legs are interchangeable. So I'll just start with A. Now look at that. A times the square root of 2 equals 5 square root of 2. What must A be? 5. Yeah, they both have the square root of 2, which you could kind of cancel out. So A would be 5. Now, if A is 5, then B is also 5 because it's isosceles. So this is 5 and this is 5. And if you wanted to draw the triangle separately, you're more than welcome to do that too. So this is 5 square root of 2. These are both equal with our A and our B, so we can use our equation. Now, over here to the right, we have what type of triangle? There you go, a 30, 60, 90, or 30, 90, 60, however you want to say it there. Because if this is 90 degrees here, this makes a straight line, so this must also be 90 on the right, 30, 90, so the missing angle must be 60. So I'm going to draw this one separately over here just so we can have that picture. So here's my 30, 90, 60. I have this is D. I know this is now 5 and this is C. So what am I given in this triangle? The short leg. And we know if we take our short leg times square root of 3 is the long leg. So my short leg is 5 square root of 3, and that equals my long leg. Which variable is my long leg? C. C is my long leg. Another way to remember your long leg versus your hypotenuse is the legs will always touch the right angle. So the parts that make the right angle are the legs. Okay, and then what's the other part? Short leg. Good. Short leg, multiply it by 2 is your hypotenuse. So 5 times 2 is 10. So D must be 10. So now we have all of our parts. So just to make sure that we have all of our formulas together, if you want to do this at the end of your notes, we're going to write down the formulas in one spot, and that can be a quick reference for you to look at later. So go ahead and write down your 45, 45, 90 and your 30, 60, 90. That kid also told me that he was really into like heavy metal rock songs. So I also call those the screaming songs. So they just scream at you. All right, what's the shortcut for the 45, 45, 90? Good. Leg times the square root of 2 equals the hypotenuse. So we have a leg and a leg and a hypotenuse. If it's a 30, 60, 90, short leg times the square root of 3 is the long leg. And what's the other one? Short leg, multiply it by 2 is your hypotenuse. And how do we know which one is the short leg? Which one's the long leg? And which one's the hypotenuse? There you go. All right, your homework is on Canvas. Jump to it, get it done. Again, if you don't show any work, that's okay, but make sure that you solve for all of the variables. If you notice, most of these problems had 2 things for you to solve for, like you needed another leg and hypotenuse, or you needed both legs. So make sure that you solve for all of the parts to get full credit.